My name is Joao, and I go by Soft Glass. With the help of my incredibly talented friends, I made an album called How Strange. And I wanted to talk about the creation of that project because I think the process was just as important as the final product. So, we're going to talk about each song and the story and genesis of each song. This is Talking How Strange. So, today we're going to talk about Pool Steps. It's the first song on the album, and it took over 2 years to finish. We went through a lot of different versions, and I'm really glad that we took our time with it because I think the final version is the version that needed to exist.
I'm Adam Strauss. I mixed this album with Joao and a lot of other stuff, and I'll let you say all the other stuff that I did.
You did production and engineering and editing and playing and like literally anything and everything. But yeah, just like what's your like your boldest memory of working on this song?
This is gonna sound kind of goofy, but it was actually like when I like stayed with you at your parents' house and I got to see the eponymous pool steps. And I was like, oh, it was funny because I don't know if it was you or Aaron that did like a little video thing for that, but it like perfectly matched my like what I see in my head when I listen to that song.
My name is Aaron Vasquez. I'm a director and photographer based out of New York City, New York. Nailed it.
In 2019, I played a show with Sunny. That was kind of like my first attempt at like showing this music off. I think I ended up playing Pool Steps. I used that show as kind of a test to see how that music would translate. Time it goes by, so it goes. You had been to a bunch of my other shows before that, and how was that show and that music different than kind of like the earlier stuff?
I was more nervous then than I had been in a long time because I was like, oh man, I know he's working on some stuff and and then I invited a bunch of people, like our friend Josh Edwards was there, who we always are both trying to impress at all times. I remember that concert very vividly of how well you did and how the room began to just like turn into the color you wanted with every song, and it was just awesome to see. And I was just like, I came away from that being like, oh man, this is gonna be such a cool next couple of years for you.
What would you say was like the biggest challenge in the production or mixing side?
I feel like we struggle with the drums a little bit with this because I feel like we both had a specific thing in mind that the drums that we had weren't.
And speaking of, I feel like that is a common theme in most of the album was like trying to get the drums right. The drums were always like a give and take of kind of what I had in mind, what you had in mind, what we both wanted but couldn't necessarily get to. But with Pool Steps, I was like so happy with the result, to the point where I remember you being like, are you sure, dude? I don't know if I'm like really into them. And I was just like, don't touch them, please. Just we're there, man. Just like, don't touch them. I promise you, like this is exactly how I want them to sound.
Again, I feel like this would have been like so much fucking easier if we just like had a studio that we could just use whenever we wanted to, and like we're in even remotely the same part of the country.
Yeah. And to that point, I mean, these drums were recorded in Vietnam, like via a FaceTime session with Eric. I mean, it still blows my mind to think that like 50%, 60% of the drums on this album were recorded on the other side of the world.
I'm Eric. I am a drummer. I guess these days I've been itching to call myself a producer as well. I think that song in particular, that might have been the first song of yours that I ever played. I like to just like overly listen to a song before I sit down and play it, and I'll like tune the drums or whatever to that song vaguely, and then kind of make adjustments as I'm like hearing it through my headphones. But yeah, man, it was a very easy transition from me listening to it to me playing it, and I then went in to listen back while you were on FaceTime, and you at the time, you like didn't even, I guess you were just trusting me because it was just coming through the phone. but yeah,
through the speakers into FaceTime through my iPhone speaker. And I was like, this sounds great, man. You guys are killing it. I think there was the song, and then there was like kind of a jam section at the end, and I was just kind of yeah, dude, just like riff at the end. And I remember you sent me the drums back, and I was like, okay, like there needs to be a third verse, because before that third verse like didn't exist. It was just like an instrumental breakdown. It was just like an endless loop or whatever.
Yeah.
And your drums inspired me to write a third verse and third chord.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I basically tailored the arrangement to your drums, because I was like, I need to let these drums shine a little longer. I got to make this song longer. It was for the better, because it allowed me to finish the story of the song. Your drums like gave me that canvas to kind of like finish the song as it like needed to be finished, you know.
My name is Josh, also known as Cautious Clay.
You remember when we were working on the song, and I was like, hey dude, I have this idea for this chorus, and I was like, could you hear anything over that? And you were like, yeah, let me try something. And immediately you were like, and I was like, oh yeah, that's it.
Well, sometimes the best ideas are the very first ideas, you know, so it's always good to follow through with that.
At least with you, it's that way. For me, it's like my best ideas are like my 110th idea after working on it for 3 years.
Oh, man. I mean, that's different for everybody.
I think the last thing I want to touch on is just the change that the track went through, basically. And originally the guitars were totally different. It was like sitting in the corner against the wall and beside the pool steps. So it was like that, you know, which always felt like really happy and just like very straightforward to me. Like if gravity feels good on my legs, the sky's getting purple. I wanted the song to feel a little more vague, or just like a little more melancholy and a little grayer. The day before I sent you the final stems, I got this guitar, and right as I was about to send the stems out, I was just like, let me just try something else. And I played different chords over the melody, and I was just like, oh, that's the song. I just realized like that's exactly what I've wanted this song to be. So these were tracked the night before I sent the final stems.
Not to get all theory nerdy on you before here, but I feel like before you, it would like move down and resolve to kind of like a 1 feeling chord, and now it is like resolving to like goes down to the 4 instead. I feel like that happened with a lot of tracks that we worked on, where you know, we'd get somewhere and it kind of just fall by the wayside, and then like a couple months later you'd have reworked it to be, you know, more fleshed out, more closely aligned with the kind of the emotional aspect that I think you're going for.
Personally, I think somewhere in the process of making the album, I had kind of a shift in purpose, you know, in my music making process, and it was less about like making things just sound good and more about giving them, you know, functionality, like giving everything a function. And I think that shift really like changed the trajectory of the album, because it gave us reasons to like make certain decisions. Like on Pool Steps, for example, it gave us a reason to change the harmony, which I think musically was for the better, but also like it strengthens the themes of the song and the album. And I don't think, you know, and that took a while for me to get to that point where I could approach the music that way. And I think if we would have not rushed, but if we would have finished the album like a year or two earlier, maybe I wouldn't have had that shift, you know?